Hello and welcome to the Video Lab podcast. My name is Sam and I'm here with my good friend AJ.
Hey there.
Together we review movies, TV shows, and streaming content.
On today's show, we have our first repeat appearance, Bryce. Fucking shut up. I know it was awkward.
Today we have our first repeat appearance, Bryce.
Was it bad or did it just sound funny?
You just got to loosen up a little bit.
Yeah. All right. I was thinking too much. All right. On today's show, we have our first repeat guest, Bryce.
Hello.
Perfect.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
What is it you want, Barry? You want the moon?
I want the truth!
I see dead people.
You shall not pass!
You'll shoot your eye out, kid.
This is Sparta! I am your father.
Let us fight to free the world, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us all unite!
After losing everything in the Great Recession, a woman embarks on a journey through the American West, living as a van-dwelling modern-day nomad.
I started out for that gold. Finding bits and pieces, all worth their reach, I'll carry it on. When somewhere in the line, I followed my eyes and went alone.
All right, I got a pop filter this time, aka a sock over my microphone. So hopefully my puhs don't sound as puh.
Oh, did it sound like that in our other recording?
Yeah. So
okay.
Quick test.
Yeah, you sound good.
Is that pop?
It's a normal amount of popping. It's the good kind of popping.
It's like early 2000s Taylor Swift pop.
It's like a Mountain Dew, but not a nasty Code Red, just like a solid one on the rocks.
Like an OG Mountain Dew?
Yeah, slightly watered down out of the can.
Oh, yeah.
It's very important because Mountain Dew by itself is almost just poison. And I say that as a mountain connoisseur.
It is pretty gross. Like it's got like 195 grams of sugar, I think, per can.
Not as much as Fanta, surprisingly.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And you don't even get any caffeine for it. It's just bad
So
for
fucking
you.
ripoff.
Yeah. So when are you guys going to have me on for a movie that like fucking sucks?
Fear not. For the next movie we have you on, it will be a trash movie you can just piss on.
Okay, awesome. Not a mediocre one, though. Mediocre is the worst.
So you want piss, but
Maybe
not like Green Book?
Horribly terrible. Just not like boring bad.
Okay.
Just bad enough that it really pisses me off.
Where it's like trying not to be bad, but it is.
Yeah. Because like any dumpster fire just becomes funny. I want to be mad. I want to be just deeply upset.
Sam, do you want to do a segue?
I'm trying to figure out how to do a segue from this.
Sam's thing is like there's like chit chat in the beginning, and then he finds a segue of like
yeah
to the movie.
I don't know. I'm playing into it.
All right, good. Yeah,
I'm giving you plenty of opening material before the first like trailer noise goes off.
You know what also makes me angry is when you have to work in a factory like Amazon.
Is the economic recession of 2008.
Here's your segue.
Hey, bada bing, bada boom, bada ba.
Another Smith lyric I have is, when you're laughing and dancing and finally living, you hear my voice in your head and think of me kindly. And then also, the one that means the most to me is, home, is it just a word, or is it something that you carry within you? So, yeah, we like that.
I like that one.
Yeah. Me too.
All right, so what did you guys think about Nomadland?
Wow, like that. Your heart was not in that transition. I'm so sorry.
What did you guys think about Nomadland?
It reminds me of a Patton Oswalt skit.
I know exactly what you're talking about, but I can't remember what it is.
It's the magician one.
Yes, it is. It's the magician one.
That's the voice Sam just
You
gave.
see the ball? Okay, ball's gone. Bada boom.
See the rabbit? Now you don't.
There it is. Now, is this
out.
one of those skits where there's a bad magician up front and he's telling jokes that obviously aren't funny, but there's a very butch lesbian in the back row who's just cackling? And all I'm saying is, if it is, I've seen it done better.
That was a good, almost verbatim line of that.
I watched that special way too many times in senior year of college.
Anyway, Nomadland.
We describe the movie. It won't take long. You can summarize it in 2 sentences. Nomadland is based on a nonfiction book that came out, I think, sometime in the aughts, that was just talking about these old people that after the recession lost everything and just took to living out of RVs. So this is kind of an adaptation of that nonfiction into a fictional story. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good.
So Frances McDormand, after losing literally everything in her life, the town that she lived in doesn't even exist anymore. She goes on somewhat of a spiritual journey to try and figure out what the hell to do next. And that puts her into living in a van, basically being homeless, and just vibing with a bunch of old people who also got totally fucked over in roughly 2008.
That's a great synopsis, and I hope the Oscars use that as a line.
There's still time.
There's still time.
Yeah, I was trying to, on a heavier note, I guess, try to figure out a funny segue into this movie, but it's such an emotional and intense movie, but yet subtle. It's hard to come up with a witty way into it.
I suppose it's not easy to segue into a very. Not a lot of this movie is humorous in a very ha-ha way. More of a dark way.
I won't even call it humorous. 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri is humorous. This is almost post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, I almost had almost like a steampunky apocalyptic
steampunk
ethos.
What?
Not steampunk. I'm sorry, steampunk is not the right word. The vibe that you were just discussing is what I'm trying to get at.
Okay.
Of the end times sort of mentality. The way I describe this movie is incredibly melancholic. There's a really good piano track that goes throughout the most of the movie, and it's just it's a very low grade sadness at all times.
Yeah, and it's usually accompanied by a single violin that goes with it. That just kind of that's the only non-diegetic piece in the movie, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear it
a
few times.
Yeah, it's a short soundtrack, and they're all very somber pieces for the most part.
Yeah, and it does actually play into it in the end when she starts performing it on the piano.
Yeah, right.
The 2 things that stuck out really big to me when I watched this was the cinematography was amazing. All the landscape shots that they got at early morning or late evening, sunrise and sunset, and the way they framed up those shots was really, I thought, breathtaking.
Yeah, and just the really super ultra wide lenses to just take in as much as possible.
And they just let the film breathe too. They don't have crazy sound effects, or like you guys said, the music track isn't super big or crazy. It lets it just breathe, and you take in the different beauty of the shots that they created in this.
most of the music that shows up is like entirely diegetic. It's people strumming on guitars. It's, around the campfire. It's country songs that are being performed live at a bar.
Hey, how about a drink? How about a toast to our friends? Not the friends you're going to see every day, no. Instead, we're going to drink to the friends who had to go away. I bet you know just who I mean. The friends who had to depart, the friends in our heart.
Did that piano guy like freak you guys out at all when you saw him for the first time? With the top hat?
He was interesting. His song was like an incredible level of dark that it's on the soundtrack and it's haunting.
When he first showed up, I'll be honest, I was like, why is this incredibly Hasidic looking guy suddenly in the movie? Like, it just cuts to him like a comedy shot.
Yeah.
Besides him, the other thing that stuck out to me was how believable all the characters were in this. It legitimately felt like they plucked people out of real life, and maybe they were, that are just regular people.
They did, yeah.
The actors' names are the exact same as the characters they played.
Yep.
Including Swanky. That is her name.
That's amazing. And it felt like a good break from a typical Hollywood type movie, or even an indie movie to some level, where it has quote unquote professional actors. All these like people felt real, and the stories felt real, and the way they talked, like, it wasn't perfect written out sentences. They had uhs and ums and weird kind of pauses in there.
Right. They were real people. And there's only 2 professional actors in this whole movie, and that's Fern and Dave. But everyone else is playing dramatized versions of themselves and their own stories. So when they're talking about these heartbreaking stories, that's their lived experience. And it's incredibly moving stuff. And it does feel very raw and real like that for that reason.
And I think, the landscape shots and also like the Foley plays into it as well, because if you're just listening to like the footsteps and the, mechanical tinkerings and the sound of rain, it all is so crisp and clear as well that it really sells like this kind of gritty reality.
Yeah, a gritty natural world. The nature plays a big role in the film, even though it's,
the wasteland.
It's a natural deserts and trees, and it's a very, I thought this was an apt movie, Sam, because we've reviewed Soul and Sound of Metal, where movies about
sound
sensations
yeah.
and sound, and just like simple sensations and pleasures. And I thought this was a natural kind of follow-up into that, because this movie focuses a lot on that natural beauty, and that's why a lot of these people have chosen this lifestyle is part of that, is to be in touch with nature more.
Part of why I see it as like post-apocalyptic, though, or at least with that vibe, is because the nature isn't really glamorized at all. If anything, when they're describing, I want to be out in the wild, it feels more like a coping mechanism, because it's just they're in the middle of the freaking desert, and everyone's just probably covered in dirt and sweat, and there aren't showers, and they're just living in like a hellscape,
But what does that say about what they want compared to as, okay, so they're in this setting now in the wilderness, which they want to be in, versus with what their old lives were, where a lot of them just, going to day-to-day job, but then they got screwed over by sickness, and then their government / job screwed them over, or something else tragic happened in their life where, nothing was really set up in society to help take care of them, and they got screwed over. They're like, well, screw that. I'm going to come and just enjoy my life and what is out here in the world.
That's where the bleakness to me comes in, is that you've got, it's all old people, because it's focused on, these people that have worked hard, physical, blue collar jobs their whole lives. And then right when they're about to retire, everything gets ripped out from under them. For a lot of people, it's medical bills. Other people, it's someone in their family died and they just can't stick around anymore. People lose their homes. They like get entirely like screwed over by the established systems that were supposed to keep them safe. Like they mentioned at one point, one of the ladies, as she's retiring, is going to get $500 a month for Social Security after working since she was 12. And it's just like, that's nothing. That's not enough to even like eat healthily, let alone make a mortgage payment or like live at all. So I almost see it as like after they lost everything, it's so bleak because then they have to go and live like this because the alternative is just, I don't know, you're on the street. So they're stuck in just this, calling it purgatory would be too nice. You know, it's worse than that. They aren't even like given the dignity of death. They're just like stuck wasting away their golden years because there's just nothing. And they have to convince themselves that this is good, that this is like something they can still, you know, benefit from or enjoy. But you look at the actual conditions that they live in and how they still continue to get screwed over by lack of money, how even when they're trying to live free, they still have to work these incredibly degrading and menial jobs. Fern is cleaning vomit off of toilets and grabbing like shit-stained underwear out of the park. And after like a whole life of working hard, you'd think you could have something better, but no.
I think the baseline of this film is very much in line with the book, where it's the aftermath of the '08 financial crisis. And so I actually went into this assuming it was going to be much more explicitly geared towards, you know, old decaying industrial towns and people just being driven into homelessness because of, you know, all the stuff that you were just talking about, Bryce, and just economic calamity. And so I was expecting almost entirely that angle. But I think what's more interesting about this film is that is not the exclusive angle with which these people are pursuing that lifestyle. There's the people that have fallen on hard times, but there's also the people, you know, that there was that one lady who said her coworker, you know, died like 2 weeks after retirement and she didn't want to be a workhorse put out to pasture.
Yeah. Or the other person who said,
I worked for corporate America, you know, for 20 years. And my friend Bill worked for the same company. He had liver failure. A week before he was due to retire, HR called him in hospice and said, you know, let's talk about your retirement. And he died 10 days later, having never been able to take that sailboat that he bought out of his driveway. And he missed out on everything. And he told me before he died, just don't waste any time, Burl. Don't waste any time. So I retired as soon as I could. I didn't want my sailboat to be in the driveway when I died.
Yeah, and I guess the workhorse line was from the main camper.
I thought you were going to say it was from Animal Farm because it's kind of like the horse in that. Like he works his hardest his whole life and then he just gets fucked over and turned into glue in the end.
Yeah.
In a way, it's like a subtle criticism of, you know, the capitalist system that put everyone in this situation. It's never explicit about it, but
right. And I think that's what's so interesting is there's a ton of different things that this is critiquing and putting a lens towards without being terribly explicitly about one thing in particular. Like there are certain characters that are pursuing this because they want to feel a sense of freedom and to be in, you know, have a sense of independence and want to live the lifestyle. I think a good example of this is actual Wisconsin native who, I don't know if you guys remember the guy with the cowboy hat who bummed a cigarette from Fern.
Yeah.
He's from Wanakee, Wisconsin. I read this article on the State Journal about him. He graduated high school in Wanakee in 2016. And then he just hopped a rail. I mean, despite having a family, he just hopped a rail and it just lives as a nomad. Not because of any destituteness. It's just because he does that to be free and he can't stay in one spot. Fern is also a good capturing of that too, because she has tons of opportunities to stay with other people. She's offered shelter by Dave, her sister, family, friends. To me, I viewed her specifically, and you can find a bunch of different stories in different veins, but her inability to feel at home anywhere, I think, is very much due to the loss of her husband, who she finds it difficult to find anywhere that's home after Empire, Nevada, because he's not there. She feels heartbreak and loss, and she is trying to find peace in a simpler lifestyle. And I think a lot of these people fall into that camp rather than just exclusively all these people have been fucked over, you know, because there definitely are those people.
I can't imagine what you're going through, the loss of your husband and the loss of your whole town and friends and village, and that kind of loss is never easy. And I wish I had an easy answer for you, but I think you've come to the right place to find an answer. I think connecting to nature and to a real true community and tribe will make all the difference for you. I hope so.
I mean, I might be pushing it a little too hard because I do agree.
No, but I think you're right though, because those themes about capitalism and work and labor and dying with dignity, those are all in there. But what's so interesting is this is so much more of a kaleidoscope of different things.
Right, and that's what I want to say. It isn't just like this negative perspective of everything. It is like, it does show other perspectives. Like the people who seem to actually enjoy this life usually are like younger ones that are depicted, and they're more wandering. There's also like a big motive, it seemed, of people with dogs being depicted as happier. You know, like dogs show up so much in this movie.
Yeah, I really liked that.
I think one of the most powerful images you talked about, AJ, where it shows Fern trying to decide whether or not she wants to settle down with David when they go to David's son's house, was when she is physically divided with her van, between the van and David's house by the fence. If you guys remember that shot.
Yep. Yeah, that was a really good shot.
I was thinking you were going to say when she's just sitting at that dinner table all by herself, staring out the window.
Or that, yeah.
And it's just dead silence. You can almost hear how uncomfortable she is.
She's physically uncomfortable sleeping in a bed and being under that roof.
Doesn't it say a lot too how we keep going back to these blue collar jobs to survive into the wilderness, and we have these varying levels of even freedom in the wilderness, where we have the really fancy RVs. They even go to like a fancy RV show, and you know, for these certain sect of society that are trying to live this freestyle life, they have to keep, like Bryce said, thriving by working in between all these different areas.
Yeah, that was like the biggest, I don't know, heartbreak of it all, is even in like selling everything they had left, even in abandoning, you know, homes that they've had their whole lives and towns they've lived in and worked in. They still are victim to having to make money somehow. No matter what community they build, no matter what generosity is there, they have to have money. When Fern's van breaks down and she needs like $2,500 and she just doesn't have it, it just grounds everything in like, oh, you can't escape no matter how much you want to.
I will play devil's advocate though and say, I think one other theme in this movie is it's trying to convey how caught up in cycles or like a normal routine we can get in sometimes. And that routine is represented in seeing Fern or other people do all these different jobs. Like at the end of the day,
she keeps going back to Amazon every holiday
even
season.
Though she could go somewhere else or stay with her family and stuff, she likes the consistency to some level of different work in general to keep her mind busy from, you know, partially away from the loss of her husband, but also just because she's been doing it her whole life.
Right.
It's hard to break away.
What I get most from her is she really has a lot of pride and independence, and she doesn't want to be dependent on other people, and she likes living a free lifestyle, even if that means she is markedly more destitute than she would be if she just stayed with her sister.
Are you still doing the van thing?
Yeah, I'm parked over at the Desert Rose RV Park.
Oh, we just drove by there today. Didn't we, girls?
How's your mom?
She's wonderful. She misses you a lot.
Please tell her I miss her too.
I will. But really, Fern, if you need a place to stay, you can come over and stay with us. We're worried about you.
Thanks. Don't worry about me. I'll let you know. I promise.
Okay.
See you, Aubrey.
You hear about that too, and people who once they retire, they go insane almost because they don't know what to do or whatever to keep busy. They don't have enough hobbies, or they don't have a plan for what's next. They just think, oh, I'm going to retire. It'll be great. And then there's nothing there.
Yeah. I mean, so many of my hobbies focus around just like being in a comfy place, having lots of media to just cram into my eye holes and ear holes, So when I just see the stills of these people just like sitting on their, folding chair and just looking aimlessly at like over the horizon while they're like eating a can of beans, to me, that's like the worst possible like end result for my golden years, So maybe other people would see it as more freeing, but to me, there's no glamour associated with that.
Yeah, I think a lot of these people do enjoy a slower lifestyle. There was a vet I remember a veteran who said that he had PTSD and he couldn't stand being around loud noises or people, and so that's part of his motivation. But a lot of these people, it just seems, are very content to just relax in the wild, with their dog or just sitting on a chair.
Even the vet, though, it was like he was there because of like negative reinforcement, like he couldn't choose to live in other places. He had to get away from all the sound. So whether he actually liked it or not was irrelevant. It was like the alternative was just hell for him.
It is still the wilderness too, At one point when Fern's van breaks down, like Bryce said, and gets a flat tire, her one friend, is it Swanky or Linda?
Swanky.
Who tells her, what are you doing? Like, you can die out here. This is the wilderness, the middle of the desert. It's not just a game. It's not just like, oh yeah, go out here and be free. You have to have a plan and know how to thrive.
I actually thought Swanky's couple monologue bits were really good in the film, with her expressing both talking about the dignity of dying and also a appreciation and connection to nature and its healing qualities. She had this riff about, kayaking all over and seeing moose and swallows and just really simple natural environments. And I think that's an ethos that kind of pervades the film, both with characters and just the lens of the camera itself, with Fern walking around it in nature, just an appreciation for it.
She also sent that video to Fern. Was it after she ran away from Dave's family that she got that? I'm trying to remember when in the movie it was.
Yeah, I think it was.
Because she finally made it back to that place with all the swallows on a lake that she said she'd be perfectly happy dying in. And I didn't notice it at the moment, but I think that might have been like a turning point for Fern, where she stopped being miserable about everything and did see some kind of opportunity for beauty.
I'm going to be 75 this year, and I think I've lived a pretty good life. I've seen some really neat things, kayaking, all those places. And, like moose in the wild, a moose family on a river in Idaho, and big white pelicans landing just 6 feet over my kayak on a lake in Colorado, or come around a bend, was a cliff, and find hundreds and hundreds of swallow nests on the wall of the cliff, and the swallows flying all around and reflecting in the water, so it looks like I'm flying with the swallows, and they're under me and over me and all around me. And the little babies are hatching out, and eggshells are falling out of the nest, landing on the water and floating on the water, these little white shells. It was just so awesome. I felt like I'd done enough. My life was complete. If I died right right then, that moment, be perfectly fine.
Because after that and her talk with the leader of the nomads, she like went out to the coastline and just relished in the waves and the rain and the actual natural place. And can I talk about that leader of the nomads?
Yeah, what's his name? I can't remember.
Yeah, his name is Bob Wells. I had to look this guy up because his final performance, his final speech about his son was like incredible. Like some of the most moving acting I have ever seen. I was like, who is this guy? Well, he's the guy who in real life founded this whole movement following the financial crisis of the living out of RVs and forming communities. So his actual name, Bob Wells, he's depicting a version of himself. I don't like Wikipedia didn't say if he actually had a son or not that, you know, had that went through what he did. But like, this is the guy.
I rarely ever talk about my son, but today would be his 33rd birthday, and 5 years ago he took his life. And I can still barely say that in a sentence. And for a long time, every day was, the question was, how can I be alive on this earth when he's not? And I didn't have an answer. And those were some hard days. But I realized that I could honor him by helping people and serving people. It gives me a reason to go through the day. Some days that's all I've got. And out here, there's a lot of people our age, and inevitably there's grief and loss. And a lot of them don't get over it either. And that's okay. That's okay. One of the things I love most about this life is that there's no final goodbye. You know, I've met hundreds of people out here, and I don't ever say a final goodbye. I always just say, I'll see you down the road. And I do. And whether it's a month or a year or sometimes years, I see them again. And I can look down the road and I can be certain in my heart that I'll see my son again.
Yeah, you know, I was having a hard week because it was the 1 year anniversary of my brother passing away. Oh, you know, I've been thinking, oh God, I just hope there's something after this life, because it's just too hard to imagine never being able to see him again. And
I mean, it's like he said, he doesn't like to say goodbye when he's on the road. He just says, we'll see you later.
Yeah. And I was watching this movie. Jess was sleeping next to me, and I just started crying, like bawling my eyes out when he said that, and talking about losing his son to suicide. And I'm like, well, if this isn't like some sign of, you know, whatever, Lee or whoever, AJ or whoever, just trying to help me get through the week and just put me at ease a little bit. I thought it was such a beautiful monologue that he did.
It really is like such a powerful moment, and he just presents it so well. It feels real to the point where even if it didn't happen, like you can tell he understands it and knows how to communicate it.
I have a hard time believing that wasn't a real story. It seemed very real, and given that the rest of the characters were dramatizing versions of themselves, I think that tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. This is kept thinking about the movie that night going to bed. And I don't know. This is one of those movies to me that I think is probably going to stick with me the rest of my life. It was such a moving.
It did really come at just the exact timing, didn't it? And that was so unexpected at the end too.
I was trying to figure out if they're going to end the movie beyond that with like an open-ended, like open ending. And I was going to initially I was going to be angry, like, oh, she's just going to drive off or something. Even though they had that, I thought it worked well because they kind of tied a ribbon on it at the end, not only with Bob's monologue between her and Fern, but with Fern going back to her house and kind of accepting, like, okay, I'm going to have to, I honor my husband by remembering him, but I have to also move on with my life. I can't get stuck in the past, basically.
Right. No, absolutely. That's true.
So it kind of gets the best of both worlds.
That line she said to Bob at the end.
What's remembered lives. I maybe spent too much of my life just remembering Bob.
And then right after that, she goes to the garage or the storage locker. That was the opening scene. And
yeah, that's right.
Gives it all up.
Right. I also thought a good theme in amongst her traveling and being, broken with the loss of her husband is this movie subtly reinforced the idea of grief without the expectation of resolution.
Yeah, that was also part of Bob's monologue was,
yeah, right.
Some of these people, they don't get better, but that's okay.
No, and I thought that was good because it's a very standard trope of a Hollywood film to be like, something bad happened and then
one moment we're just gonna be all better now.
Yeah, everything's all better. And I think it's a very mature concept for a film, and it's hard to pull that off without making the film too macabre.
Yeah, sappy or one way or the other. It's a fine line.
And this was a really good balance of those concepts. I mean, this movie just touches on so many different things between life and capitalism and labor and nature. And it's impressive the scope that this movie covers without needing to explicitly tag on those things. They're all just an underlying presence.
I think it's just all that realism of people and their stories kind of builds together into that like wide swath of narratives where you can look at it and take what you want from it, because there's so many experiences that you might empathize with or have shared with these people. And I think part of that pain being the focus on like seniors and older people kind of really sells that ending with Bob, where he's saying, sometimes you can't move on. So many of these people are dying from cancer or, it's too late for them, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's not something you just get over overnight either, when the grief process is just with you for a long time. Did you guys, on a side note, I was trying to figure out, did they actually film in an Amazon warehouse?
I was wondering that too, because I had a hard time believing Amazon was thrilled about that.
I know, it's like portraying your corporation as like honestly, a big heartless thing.
Well, what's interesting is she repeatedly mentioned that she was well paid doing it. And there wasn't anything explicitly negative about the Amazon experience. I think it's very much the American psyche. Like us watching this, we realize like, oh, damn, she's working in an Amazon warehouse where,
we've
people
read the news headlines.
We've read the news headlines. Yeah. So I think that's there. And so I don't know. This seemed like a real factory.
I think it was. Because
I don't know if, they
weren't explicitly negative about it at all from what I remember. Even when they were in the place, they were, smiling and waving at each other, and all the workers got along at lunch, and, they were paid well, and it was reliable work, and the factory looked super clean and organized. It's like, we know in reality, people are like pissing into bottles because their trackers are saying, oh, you took too long of a break between packaging shit.
Yeah, so this almost neutral visual of an Amazon warehouse seems like exciting PR for them.
I guess. I think it'd be too expensive. I mean, for this being almost an indie film, it has to have been real for budget purposes, I think.
Yeah, well, the alternative I was thinking is they could have just gone to a different factory
and just like reset it up.
Yeah, or just like, asked to film. But it looked like she was actually packing Amazon boxes. Like
it was
like in a very specific
the inside packaging wrap.
Yeah, the inside packaging wrap and the box it very seemed like a real thing to me.
I also wondered, God, how cold do you think it would have gotten in her van in some of those nights? Because you would have to be running the van like all night to keep heat on, right?
I think she just like bundled up a lot or like had some sort of generator, because you can't run that 24/7 or that long because her van would die out quicker. Man, in the desert,
she was shown multiple times just like tossing and turning because it was too cold.
Yeah, God, the desert temps can get real down there. I bet you
it can get into the negatives.
Yeah, and the negatives for sure, totally. And she seemed to kind of travel seasonally, to slightly warmer climates when she could.
Yeah, although they certainly like the freedom of the wilderness to some extent, that's one area where it definitely made me appreciate having a house and warmth and heat and food and
yeah, right. Like that was probably my biggest like walk away from this, because a lot of the messaging, on what it means to, find a meaning in your life or whatever, I've been exposed to before through various avenues, school, motivational books. Like there was a guy who survived the Holocaust who wrote a book where he was trying to interpret why different people like managed to make it through living in a concentration camp or not. And it was like finding something to hold on to. But the thing that I got the most out of it was like how a house can like represent having anything in the world, I mean, Fern is the best example. She has nothing anymore because her town doesn't exist. She never had kids and her husband's dead. Her old job doesn't even exist anymore. And then you contrast that with Dave, who, he has this big family that welcome him back, and they have multiple houses that are kind of out in their own corner of nature. And it's like, this is something physical and real that, they own and that they can change and fix up themselves over the generations that they can then pass on, Like she was attached to her van because she put work into it. She refused to sell it for scrap because, she had just committed to it.
Yeah, she loved that van. It was her home, and that's where she loved being. It was not an apologetic, oh, I have to live in my van. She genuinely enjoyed it.
And we saw her working on it a whole lot, so it really sold it. Like when she's, using drills on the side of it, and when she's poking at the rust, like it really sells like the importance of having a physical thing that you have control over.
I mean, it seems like real estate always ends up on the upside.
I don't want to disagree with you, but I have to say I do. It's strange that you encourage people to invest their whole life savings, go into debt, just to buy a house they can't afford.
Fern, that's a rather limited look at what we do.
Is it limited, George?
I mean, we're not all in a position to just chuck everything and hit the road.
Oh, you think that's what I've done, George? I chucked everything to hit the road? Is that what I did?
All right. I'm sorry.
I think that what the nomads are doing is not that different than what the pioneers did. I think Fern's part of an American tradition. I think it's great.
Yeah, it's like that, touching on the American dream a little bit, where it's like owning a house is such a major deal, and for these nomads, the van or their vehicle is their house, and that's what, protects them, and it's what they maintain.
And I'm not even like a property fetishizer or anything, but the way that this sold it is like part of a stable family unit and being able to have a legacy and be comfortable with, your old age and what you're passing on and being secure. I did come around a little bit, like, you know what? It kind of makes a good statement. It's proof that you built something and that you can change something.
There's that one character, Patty, who said she wanted to build a small little settlement out of recycled material for her kids to give to.
Yeah, that they could have. And I mean, what she described sounded fucking ugly and horrible as shit. But like the sentiment was there.
The sentiment was beautiful, but I have a hard time believing a bunch of plastic bottles and tires would
make a very
make a good home. But
yeah.
I don't want to shit on
live there. No, they fucking won't.
Well, do you guys want to go ahead and take a crack at guessing what the budget and box office was for this?
Budget, I would guess $32 million. Maybe that's too high. I'm sorry. Bryce, you go. I want to guess again, but I want to hear your guess first.
Why don't you guys guess the budget first?
Well, this was clearly like a passion project for Frances McDormand because she like got the option for the script and chose the director for it, Chloe Zhao, who actually it's a good thing we delayed this like 19 times because she just got Golden Globe for Best Director last night. And she's like,
I was going to mention that.
She's like first Asian woman to get Golden Globe, something like that.
Pretty major.
And the film itself had got one Best Picture at the Golden Globes.
Yeah, so I would guess it'd be pretty like relatively low budget. Like I brought up Hell or High Water as a comparison last time I was on. So I almost want to say it'd be like range of 5 million, maybe, if not less.
I'll go high and I'll say 7 million.
All right. Estimated budget is between 4 and 6 million.
Oh, I still lose. Yeah, that sounds about right.
And then the box office is only at 1.1 million, but I'm sure part of that was due to COVID. And I mean, it's hard to tell because I don't know if this was partially in theaters and then the majority of it was on Hulu.
Right. Well, because this movie released last year to limited theaters, and I think it's bopped around a little bit between them. And then
it won a shitload of like indie festival awards last year.
Right.
I'm sure they did the whole run too in theaters just so that it could qualify for Oscars and stuff.
Exactly. And I have a hard time believing this movie is going to struggle because, it has just been universally claimed and appraised everywhere.
If anything, it's got legs. Like, I mean, compare it to other Frances McDormand movies, the early Coen Brothers movies or Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Like, those grew over time. And this feels in a very similar vein to those.
Well, out of 10 broken down Nomad vans, how many broken down Nomad vans would you guys give it, and would you recommend it to other people to watch?
You go first, AJ.
All right. I had a hard time pegging exactly what I would rate this because it is really good. I think I'd put it in like the 8.8 range of broken down vans. I think it is a melancholic examination of humanity and distinctly captures a broad yet specific lens of what feels like a very American cultural moment.
Yeah, so I definitely was going to say the same thing in terms of like pinning what you would even rate something like this. I mean, I already have a hard enough time like assessing just pure dramas like this. I don't know. I'm not a huge drama movie guy, but like it's immaculately made and there's a lot of stuff you can take from it. But for me, it never really like comes together from all these different things in the end. Even though it has a lot of like beautiful messaging, I just don't really see the conclusion to the Fern character. I don't know, if you don't have the experiences to empathize with any of the people in this movie, I don't know how you could like enjoy it, because it's also very, very slow and deliberate.
I think I would have to give this movie the first, for me, a 9 out of 10 broken down Nomad vehicles. I mean, obviously from what we talked about, I resonate with the ending quite a bit with loss and dealing with all that, but just the cinematography, the way the people in this are portrayed as real, because they are real. And it's to me, a really good break, almost a very documentary-esque film. It's like rides the line between realism and drama film. As far as the ending, Bryce, I think in my mind, I'd like to think that Fern, once we see her driving through the mountains or up to the mountains again, maybe she's decided she wants to go live with David again and his family after kind of, coming to the conclusion she has to compartmentalize that part of her life and empire and her husband being gone. Like, always carry it with her, but realize it should be the thing that determines the rest of your life and what you should do and how you should always feel.
Yeah, I thought the ending was very characteristic of the rest of the film. I thought it was a pretty apropos ending for this.
Yeah, I don't really know what I wanted from the ending, because obviously, like we mentioned some way back during this, that like the typical Hollywood schmaltzy ending would just rob the movie of like everything, but like just a little more of a coming together would have sold it for me, because all these, great moments and beautiful little touches, like I will say that the whole Bob monologue, I mean, I'm with you, Sam, that's like a 10 out of 10 moment in the movie, and it is gorgeous, but the way it doesn't all kind of have a final message or something it doesn't have like a thing that just sticks with you and makes you questioning, I guess, aside from all the little character moments.
Yeah, it's diffuse and broad in what it touched on so many different things that I find it hard to believe that it would even try to leave us with a single parting message, because it covers so much territory.
And that's why people can come away from this with a lot of different, I don't want to say interpretations, because it's not really, cloaked in metaphor or anything, but different lessons and different
emphasis, like, you can economic lens or the loss lens. I mean, there's just a lot of different ways you can look at it. Bryce, a question we like to end part of the show with is, what movie or show that you've enjoyed recently would you recommend to the audience?
Well, instead of recommending the 3-hour-long Tarkovsky Russian 70s movie Andrei Rublev about the life of a religious artist guy that's like the slowest thing in the world, but then has the most like cathartic ending of all time. Instead of that, I'll recommend something a little more, maybe not quite on the movie side, but definitely a good watch. The channel ContraPoints on YouTube just had a great video about J.K. Rowling and turfism and like the way that British media kind of propagates that kind of bigotry, and how someone with such a big platform can cause so much damage. It's like over an hour long, but it's a really good video.
Cool. I like it. That's a good rec. Well, Bryce, thank you for coming on the show. Sam, what movie are we watching next week?
Hey, Jay. We will be watching the fantastic new-ish movie on Netflix called, hold on, I have to find it again. God damn it. I just had it. Now I can't find it.
Take your time.
Hold on, just got to click on new and popular. It's called I Care a Lot.
I Care a Lot?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
It's got the little guy from Game of Thrones in it, who I can't remember.
Peter Dinklage.
Peter Dinklage is in it.
Yeah.
The little guy.
I'm sure that he would love to have his bio just say that, the little guy from Game of Thrones.
I thought you were going to say like Sweet Bird or like Joffrey or something. Nope.
Little guy.
No, Peter Dinklage. He's a great actor.
As always, thank you everybody for listening to the Video Lab podcast. If you'd like to be a guest on our podcast, be sure to email us at thevideolabpodcast@gmail.com.
And you can find my review for this movie and other movies at my blog, asajthinks.com. And be sure to rate and subscribe to the podcast wherever you are listening.
Until next time, see ya! Peace.